Welcome to another episode of Pack Profiles presented by the Dolan Automotive Group. We take you behind the scenes, go off the field a little bit with some of our key figures here on campus. Gary Powers is our guest today, the head baseball coach at the University of Nevada. 30 years as the coach here, long time in the coaching profession. But before you ever get to be a baseball coach, you got to be a baseball fan. Let's go back to the young days for you. When did baseball become really a love in your life?
Oh, when I was a real little kid, you know. I mean, that was always something that I always would look forward to in the summers. I would sit in the back seat of my parents' car and listen to the radio on the game of the day. You know, so as long as I can remember, I've always been a baseball fan.
Who was your team? Who was the team that you followed growing up?
Well, I've been around so long that my days in that part of it even were before the Giants and Dodgers came out west. So Chicago White Sox.
Chicago White Sox. Who was doing the radio broadcast for the White Sox?
You know, I can't remember. It used to be Dizzy Dean and Pee Wee Reese would do the game of the week, you know, on TV, and that was about. Then you'd get a game of the day, and it would be a national broadcaster. But they, you know, I was always, when the White Sox played on the game of the day, I was in the car whether it was 100 degrees or not.
Were you one of those guys where you keeping score along with the game and doing all that?
Exactly. Always did that.
Yeah. What was it about the White Sox that drew you in, do you think?
Well, my favorite player back then, because I was a second baseman, was Nellie Fox. And so I always liked him as a player. And then later on, Ted Kluszewski played for them. And for whatever reason, I think probably just the name, I liked his name. And so I became a fan of his as well.
Now, did you ever get to see these guys play? You listen on the radio a lot. Did you ever have the chance to go to the ballpark and see these guys?
No, because they were all done playing by the time the A's moved out to Oakland, so I never really got a chance. I got a chance to see Willie Mays and those people play, but that was always fun.
You remember the first game you ever went to?
Oh yeah,
baseball game?
Most definitely.
Where was it?
It was in Seal Stadium in San Francisco the first year that the Giants moved to San Francisco.
Wow, that must have been a great, after listening to the games on the radio and doing all that stuff, going and seeing it live must have been just a cool experience for a kid who was so consumed by it.
I didn't sleep for 3 days, you know, so knowing that I was going to the game, and I went with my parents and my aunt and uncle. I can vividly remember, you know, sitting down the third base line, and I was in such awe of it. We spent 3 days, you know, going to 3 different games, and it was the most exciting experience of my life at that time.
You hear kids talk about it. I know I went through this when you see it on TV or you listen on the radio and you picture what it's going to be like, and then when you walk up those steps and kind of go out on the concourse and you see the field for the first time, it's like going from black and white to color. Do you remember kind of having that experience?
Without question. And in fact, back at those times when the game was over, you'd exit the ballpark by walking down the stands onto the field and out the center field bleachers. Wow. It was unbelievable. And, you know, I thought that was the best field I'd ever seen, you know, and then I look back at it because I have a picture of it and how basically real basic that park was.
Yeah. When you're walking out, did you spend a little extra time kind of lingering on the field, just making it last as long as you possibly could before you had to leave?
Most definitely, as much as they could, because they'd hurry out as much as they could. But even I was in such awe. I mean, I probably didn't sleep for a week after, you know, I was so excited.
What was it like seeing Mays and those guys play?
I mean, you know, I've seen so many of these games, but I mean, just to watch how easy they did what he did and how consistently good he was, a phenomenal baseball player. I mean, I feel honored to have had the opportunity to watch him play, physically watch him play. As
many games as you're involved in as a coach every year, I know you still enjoy going to games and watching games. When you sit back to watch another game, can you watch it just as a fan, or are you kind of thinking along strategy-wise and trying to manage the game along with those guys? I
really don't do that part of it. I try to watch all the little intricate stuff that goes on in terms of the signal systems that go on and the way that the players communicate with one another and how they run their alignments on cuts and relays and how graceful that all happens and happens with ease with those guys. And I try to watch fundamentals and techniques and different things like that.
Player-wise, who do you enjoy watching today?
I watch Jeter, you know, when Derek Jeter plays. I just like his demeanor on the field. I like his commitment to being the same guy every day. I think he gives 100% of his ability every single day, and I respect that.
Who are the managers in the major leagues that you've respected over the years and really enjoyed watching their teams?
Well, you know, Dusty Baker is one that I like. I think Bochy's done a great job with the Giants. Back in the day, Casey Stengel, the character that he was, but what he did with those quality people that played on the Yankees at that time, and the characters that went with them. And just having the opportunity to play for a major leaguer. When Jackie Jensen was my coach at home, you know, when I was at the university, I had the pleasure to play for him for 2 years, and we had the opportunity to sit down and talk so much about, you know, the game and what his experiences were, and about the players that, like Mickey Mantle and Roger Maris, and guys that he actually played with, and some of the stories that he would tell about them, you know. So those kinds of people, you know.
Was it the stories off the field or on the field that you liked more about those guys?
Both. It was interesting both ways. You know, he was pretty kind. You know, I mean, he didn't go too in depth into some of the other stuff.
Was he the biggest influence on you in terms of wanting to coach and wanting to get into this business?
Well, I wanted to coach long before that. But probably the biggest influence on my life was my dad, because he was a coach at that time, but who tried to discourage me from being a coach, but I wasn't going to listen, because that's all I cared about. But he helped me in terms of the techniques and fundamentals of the game, and you know what the expectations were, and how to you know, the things that would make it important for people to understand how to get to the big leagues and things like that. Those things were valuable experiences for me.
It's funny you talk about him trying to discourage you, because we had Coach Carter on Pack Profiles. He said the same thing with Coach Nance, who sat him down and said, you better make sure you want to do this. Not a lot of money. The hours are terrible, all this stuff. What do you say now? If you have a kid who comes to you, maybe a kid that played for you, and he comes and says, you know, Coach, I think I want to do this. I want to get into this business. Do you give him that same speech, or are you more encouraging of those guys?
Well, right now, the world's different now in our business than it was back then. But no, I always encourage it if that's something they want to do, but I also sit them down and talk about the things that they don't ever think about. And I encourage them to go in it with open eyes and understanding, and telling them that, you know, you'll eventually learn what I've been telling you, and you'll look at it from a totally different set of eyes. And every one of them, to 100% of them, will come back and say, if I knew then what I know now, and if I see it in a totally different light, see the differences that go with it. Those are the things that are funny. We can laugh about that, because I know that's going to happen to them.
Yeah, it takes a special person to make it in coaching, that's for sure. We've been very lucky to have a special person in Gary Powers here at the University of Nevada. Thanks for watching Pack Profiles, presented by the Dolan Automotive Group.